Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 2 of our class. Thanks for a great first week, and thank you to everybody who kind of let me know what they wanted to do with the group project. There's a few switch arounds, so if you are in a group and someone disappears, that just means they opted to be an individual. But just let me know if you need any assistance kind of coordinating your efforts, if you are in a group or if you are solo. So this week, now that we kind of understand the foundations of sort of like what fundraising is and what we're looking at, this week really focuses on the role of public relations and building a case statement. And so a lot of the readings are talking about, is there overlap? Is there a difference between being in fund development or versus in being PR? How do they work together? And how do we see those? And I think a lot of this too has to do with the size of your organization. So, for example, the Meals on Wheels that I'm on the board of, we recently created a new position, and it's communication slash fund development. So this idea of sort of doing both things. So getting the word out there about our agency, doing our newsletters, those kind of things, but also really looking at how do we do donor relations, which makes sense, right? Because public relations is about having relationships with the public. And, where do those things happen? What I'm going to focus on today is really this idea of building this case statement. And I think this is where, again, we as communication professionals and with expertise can come in and make a difference. And I made this comment on the discussion last week, and I don't know if you all feel this, but sometimes when, I'm reading through the readings or looking at responses, in many ways, it just seems so obvious. Of course, we would want to know who our audience is. Of course, we want to target our messages. And I have to remind myself that no, that is not obvious to many people. And different organizations, if you have someone that does not have a background, they're just thinking, get the word out there and we'll ask for donations, right? Instead of really thinking strategically. And so, same thing with building the case statement. Often, or hopefully, any organization is doing work that is valuable and worthy. And so it just seems, I say, okay, yeah, donate money to us, give us money. We're doing all these great things. But that's just not how it works. And especially in a place, even though people are very, very generous, there's a lot of places your money can go. And so thinking about how do we build a case to an individual, to a major donor, to an organization, a corporation, how do we build a case for a agency that's maybe giving us a grant, and how do we do that? And that takes some talent, and that's what we're going to kind of be working on, and also being able to tailor that case statement depending on who you're reaching out towards. And so one of the things I want to talk through whenever I teach is I always kind of look at, in the past year or so, like what are some organizations that have really been able to seize on a moment, or, and I don't want to say take advantage because I think sometimes that has a negative connotation, but recognize what's going on, particularly in the world, and how can we use that to build our case. And so it's funny, I was looking back, it's actually been a while since I've taught fundraising. I've been teaching persuasion and methods and all sorts of other things. But I was looking back at my slides, and my example from the last time I taught was actually 4 years ago, and it was just after the election of President Trump. And so I was looking at ACLU had done a major fundraising drive after the travel ban had gone into place. So I thought, okay, here we are 4 years later, like what's going on? And one of the things that, oh, there we go, fundraising encouragement manager. See, I just got so excited about this. I'll come back to that. But okay, so building a case is going to answer the question is, why is your cause organization worthy of the donation? Why should I give my $5? Why should I give my thousands of dollars? And so one of the areas that has saw a massive increase in donations was in the area of racial equity, Black Lives, and following the protests after George Floyd's death. And the Black Lives Matter organization themselves received a ton of donations. George Floyd, there was a GoFundMe that actually set records. But beyond that, many other organizations saw a great rise in that. So I just pulled like some headlines. So this was from the BBC. It says billions have been raised for racial equity groups. What comes next? So what was happening was these groups, and most of them had pre-existed, didn't have some, were not associated with directly the Black Lives Matter or the George Floyd family, but they existed to do these different things and work in the area of racial equity. So they were able to go out to the public when it was in the public's eye, on the news every day, and say, hey, here's what we do. Here's why giving money to us is going to address that problem. But also the Black Lives Matter Foundation brought in $90 million in 2020, right? And so, and part of that was their case is obviously they had a lot of name recognition and they were in the news, but they had to continue to work. And I'm sure if any of you were following the news at the time, while there was a lot of support, and then there were obviously people who did not support the movement, but there was also a lot of backlash against the Black Lives Matter Foundation. Some people questioned like the core tenets of some of their things, and there was a lot going on. So the Black Lives Matter Foundation had to continually be putting out messaging and communicating to clarify what their position was and also to explain what they were doing with their money. I thought this was really interesting. Again, it was not just individuals that were donating, it was US companies. And they were giving it to various civil rights groups. But when you think about it from a company standpoint, again, if we're talking about, I want to have a good relationship with my potential customers, one of the ways I can do that is through like corporate social responsibility, and I give my money. And I think many organizations wanted to be, as the saying goes, on the right side of history, right? So I'm supporting civil rights. We don't want a protest, or we don't want a boycott of our services if we aren't in these ways. So all of a sudden, not just like individuals who cared, but you had massive organizations saying, yep, you know what, you're right. Like, we're going to put money towards that. And an example of kind of an offshoot that I think really was able to use this to explain what was happening. So again, sometimes organizations like American Cancer Society, we know, okay, great, you're fighting cancer. March of Dimes, you're fighting premature birth. But the Detroit Bail Project, and there are bail projects all over the country, these got a lot of attention following the news. And what the Bail Project is they talk about this idea that the bail system, they say many people who are against it say it causes a lot of inequity in the country, right? Because there are people, because they do not have the economic means to post bail, have to remain in jail waiting for their trial, or, they have to do these things. And then there's the consequences of loss of work, loss of income. It's a spiraling system. Then there's the bail bond system, and sometimes that's really manipulative. And so they're saying, like, a person with means who, for example, gets arrested for drunken driving is not going to have, who can get out on bail is not going to have the same consequences as someone who does not. So the Bail Project works to raise money so that they can post bail for people who are convicted of minor crime, or not convicted, accused of, arrested for minor crimes, so that they can get out of jail. And again, not something that many people maybe were super aware of or thought about, but all of a sudden, as people were looking at something and wanting to take action and wanting to think, okay, the money that I'm giving is going to do something very, very tangible. And so I love, so their overall thing is, we are trying to end the systemic racism that is happening for so long and trying to create systemic change. When you go into the website of the Bail Project, it's really interesting because they talk about one person at a time. And so again, this idea of crafting this case, if you donate, if we get 10 people to donate $50, we can post bail for this person who then can return to their job and, make these choices. And so again, looking at, as you're building your case and making your case, not only are you going to talk about, the benefits of your organization, but I think it's really important too, to be able to put that in context. And organizations, as you know, and communication does not happen in a bubble. It happens in the broader world. And so being able to do that, but also being able to do it appropriately too, right? So thinking about how am I going to rate, is the way I'm rating, am I using these people? Am I exploiting people? Or am I genuinely saying, hey, here's what's happening and here's what we're doing? So a couple announcements. So the big thing is, I think that's due this week. I apologize. I should have checked. But so there's two major kind of things in our class. So there is the case study analysis that you are doing as an individual of an organization or choice. And with the case study, the purpose of that is to look at something that has already been done. So here's what an organization did. And either it's an exemplar and we can learn from it, and that's great, or it was maybe not an exemplar, maybe something went wrong, maybe it was utter failure, and what can we learn from that? So this is really looking at the past versus the final project is, let's take an existing organization and thinking forward, develop a fundraising plan for them, to meet a certain goal that they have. All right, I'm just gonna real quick look at oh yeah, okay, so you're going to submit the topic for your midterm case report. Again, this is individual, it can be any organization. You do want, and you don't have to have everything, and I recognize that, and people don't need to release all of their financial statements. However, if they are a registered 501(c), a lot of things like their past tax returns, the basic level is searchable. And so you can find out kind of their income and stuff. It can be a local organization, national, whatever you want. If it's something you're a part of, I think it's easier often when it's something that you're a part of because you have some of that insider information. You probably know the audience. The actual case study is 2 to 3 pages max. So as I tell all of my students, there is an art to brevity. And so you might have a lot to say and could probably fill 10 pages, but being able to figure out what are the key things, how do you give me enough information about what happened, and then how do you convey what I can learn from that? Think about how do you see course concepts being applied, where are theory and best practices missing, and what can we learn? That's the ultimate thing, and that's why we write case studies. So for the proposal this week, you're just basically gonna tell me the name of the organization and just a brief paragraph kind of explaining why you picked it and what you hope to accomplish, and just to make sure you're on the right track. So I think that's everything I have for this week. I will be working then to grade your week 1 discussion questions, and then obviously we have more discussion questions. As always, if you need anything, just shoot me an email and I'm happy to chat.